All right, the number seems to be slowing down, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Travel Information Meeting, September 2020. My name is Kelly McGarry, if you have not met me before. And I'm a compliance analyst for travel services. I'm joined today by April Berger, who will also be presenting, also a compliance analyst, and then Teresa Athen, also the assistant director overseeing travel, will be here as well. But it'll be me and April presenting today. Just a couple little housekeeping things. So just so you know, we mentioned in the email, but we will be sending this presentation out a couple business days after the meeting. And we usually send it as a YouTube link. And we also include the slides as a PDF. So don't feel like you need to, jot down notes and all that unless you want to, because we will be sending this out via the listserv. So if you'd rather just listen, just know that we will be sending that out as well. And then just so you know, for the questions format, so you are free to go ahead and ask questions as we go, but just if you do have a question, if it's related to the actual topic that we are presenting on, then we'll go ahead and do our best to answer it. If it's something that, if it's something feel like we need to think out a little bit more, something like that, then that is where we usually would address it in the listserv. So just know that if we can't answer, the question on the spot, it's something that we will address via the listserv when we do our post-meeting recap. We also have a topic today related to commute and, sorry, my voice is a little raspy. We have a topic related to commute and COVID. We're expecting maybe some weird scenarios to possibly come up with that. If there is anything that's like department related, it's a kind of funky situation that you're dealing with related to commute and people getting to work and COVID. Just know that there's a chance we may not answer that today. We may be reaching out to you separately to address that. So I just wanted to point that out with that topic. But if you have any questions, it's related to the slide, go ahead and ask it. And then if you have any general questions, those we'll be addressing at the end. So if you just have a question, it's not related to that slide, it's something else related to compliance or something else that's going on, feel free to ask it. We're just going to point out when we see it that we'll be answering it at the end. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. So kind of related to the COVID and commute topic, we wanted to just go ahead and just take a look at the official duty station and official residence policy and just kind of how the commute policy works today. So this isn't a policy change, anything like that. We are just want to communicate, what that is, because it'll set us up for discussing the COVID topic. So we just wanted to make sure it's clear, what we're talking about and kind of where that information is coming from. So as many of you know, travelers must have, an official duty station and official residence. It's how you determine whether it's a commute or if it's a temporary work location in which you can pay for ground transportation, those sorts of things. And so official residence would be the traveler's primary physical address of residence. That one's pretty straightforward. Official duty station. So the official duty station is a traveler's primary physical address of work. Travelers must have at least one official duty station. Kind of where that comes into play is sometimes it gets a little weird with student travel, things like that. If they're like just a student, but they happen to be, traveling for the university. But just know that, a traveler must have at least one official duty station. And it is possible for them to have more than one. So, for example, we have, nurses that are on rotation going to multiple work locations. They're doing that on an ongoing basis. They spend 2 days at Harborview and they do that every week, and they spend their other 3 days at UW Med Center, that kind of thing. So in those situations, it is possible for them to have more than one official duty station. And kind of how you determine a location to be an official duty station is any location where the traveler will be working for an ongoing basis, lasting or expecting to last longer than 1 year, must be considered an official duty station. I know there's all kinds of different, work assignments out there, and that gets a little kind of gray and confusing sometimes. So a lot of times, we kind of help with the department. They'll reach out to us and we kind of help evaluate those sorts of things. So if you're ever having trouble evaluating something to be a official duty station, just know we are here as a resource. We can help work you through it, but usually ultimately it's up to the department to make that decision. And so kind of where they're kind of evaluating is when we're taking a look at ongoing basis sort of thing. That's where they kind of jump in and we sort of help give you some guidance and make that determination. But anything, lasting longer than a year, and it's expecting to last longer than a year, you have to consider that to be an official duty station. And so if they're going to a temporary location and they're going to be there for 3 months, it's not really on an ongoing basis, it's less than a year, then that can be something that's defined as a temporary duty station. We'll touch on that in the next slide. And again, as a reminder, this is all current policy, so there's no policy change here. Temporary duty station, so any physical address location assigned on a temporary basis lasting for or expecting to last less than a year may be assigned as a temporary duty station. And then we just go in to define, official duty station again. So any location where, where it's expecting to, going to last over a year must be considered an official duty station. So it's less than a year, it's not, it's on a temporary basis. Any of those locations could be considered a temporary duty station. So that could be, a traveler going to a meeting downtown, or maybe it's, a nurse that's going to Harborview, but that's not something they go to on a regular basis. They just have like a temporary assignment. They're going to be there for 2 weeks working. Then something like that could be considered a temporary duty station. And then, as many of you know, what we don't pay is any sort of travel between the official residence and official duty station. That is considered traveler's commute. And that means any sort of expense related to commute is not reimbursable. So if they taking the bus, if they're taking their car, anything like that, just any ground transportation related to that route is not allowable. So once you've defined the official residence, official duty station, then you evaluate, okay, anything in between those locations is not reimbursable. It also includes any tolls or any parking. So those two things could come up if they take the 520 to get into work. It doesn't mean they can't claim the tolls if it's part of their commute. And then if they park, at work as well, all gets included in that. It's just considered commute expense is the best way to think about it. So I got a question. So since we may be working from home into March of next year, for a total of a full year working from home, how does that affect our duty station status? That is a good question, and I'm going to kind of use that as a segue into the next slide. So I'm going to go ahead and present this slide since it's kind of related to that, and I can kind of come back to that as an example. And so one thing that's been happening, we've been getting quite a few questions about exactly what Kevin's asking. So working from home, what does that have to do with all this? And a lot of times, it's going to take a little bit of evaluation. People are getting all kinds of different, work from home assignments. Like for instance, like we're expected to be, working from home until December 31. But then we got Kevin's example, they're expecting to work until March of next year. So it's going to take a little bit of a department evaluation. So we won't have, a perfect answer for you as far as determining something to be a temporary duty station. It's something that's going to take a little bit of evaluation. And I know it's definitely a little confusing right now with the working from home stuff. But let's go ahead and touch on this. So if a traveler is working remote but required to come into work on an occasional basis, the location must be determined to be a temporary duty station to be reimbursable. And so kind of pointing to Kevin's example, if given what we talked about with temporary duty station and official duty station, if based on that information, if now, what your original working location is now actually being considered a temporary duty station because now you're just coming in on a temporary basis. When you do come back, it's not going to be expected to last longer than a year kind of thing, then it could be considered a temporary duty station. And then if that's the case, then it wouldn't be considered a commute anymore and it would be allowable. I would say, for your example, Kevin, it sounds like when you do come back to work in March, then it would, at that point, again, it'll become an official duty station, and then you wouldn't be able to claim commute. But let's say, you know, from now until March, let's say there was some sort of critical work in which you like needed to, like you're being asked to go into work, but it's not expecting to last, you know, longer a year. You're just going to be going in there like on a temporary basis kind of thing. Then the department may have, you know, have the opportunity to assign that as a temporary duty station. And in that case, then they could pay it because it wouldn't no longer be a commute. So again, it's just very situational, and we've been getting, you know, kind of some weird scenarios on this. And yeah, if you have any trouble with it and you're just trying to figure it out, we recommend reaching out to our office so we can kind of work you through it, especially on that, you know, temporary duty station stuff. So parking and mileage would be covered, correct? As long as the location can be determined to be a temporary duty station, it'd be the same as if, you know. As long as that work, is considered a temporary duty station, it'd be the same as if, you know, you're going to just to a temporary meeting downtown Seattle and you're paying for the parking, the mileage to get there. There's no difference. It just comes down to like whether you can actually truly define that as a temporary duty station. Got another question. If our department allows some people to work remotely 100% and they choose to live far away or out of state, would they be able to request travel from home to our office? My answer would pretty much be the same. You know, it still comes down to whether, if they're going into the office, if it's a temporary duty station. Oh, let me scroll back up. I lost the question. And so for Jessica's question, if it would just depend on whether, you know, the department is actually, you know, requesting that they come back into work. You know, if they're assigned, if they're assigned remote, that becomes their official duty station as well as their official residence. But if there's like, you know, critical work or there's a required meeting in which they have to attend in person, then there's the opportunity that would become a temporary duty station. So it's situational. Is at the discretion of the division. So yeah, generally, Rachel, when determining temporary duty station, it's not something that we like make the ultimate decision on. It's usually coming down to the department making that decision. We're just here to educate on the policy and help you make like an informed decision. But ultimately, as far as like evaluating that year aspect and the ongoing basis is something that you're gonna you be working on at the department level. But if they're coming into the office, the parking and mileage would be covered. Yes, correct. If it's a temporary duty station. So it's just very situational. Most of the time, you know, when people are coming into work, it's an official duty station. So that's why it's a little bit confusing. It sounds kind of weird that it would be paid. But with COVID, there have been some kind of weird situations in which, maybe it could be temporary. Lily, it sounds like you're probably having you might be having some personal tech issue. And then, so that kind of leads me into the next bullet. So although circumstances of the traveler's commute may have changed due to COVID, there is no exception for this in the compliance. We actually ended up reaching out to the state just to confirm on it, and they're taking that same stance. So it's just something that's always been a part of our policy as well. So if you've ever kind of run into weird situations and come out and reach out to our office, like where somebody's circumstances change for their commute. So I'll give an example, like let's say a traveler usually takes the bus into work, but one day they go in, there's like an event going on campus, so they drive into work instead, so they brought in supplies. We do not allow commute in that example. So and it's just something that is very clearly spelled out in the commute compliance, where we get our compliance from. And it says, you know, even if circumstances change, how you get into work is the traveler's responsibility. And so COVID is not there's basically COVID is not creating an additional exception for this. So an example that we've seen is like the bus right now. Like a lot of people are not taking the bus. It's kind of deemed, you know, maybe not safe. And if you like read the bus signs, they're saying like only if it's necessary you should be taking the bus. And so even though something like that is happening, the commute is still the responsibility of the traveler. So if they're driving to work now instead of the bus, something like that, unfortunately the commute is not something that we can pay. And we did, you know, reach out to the state just to double check and just make sure we're all on the same page, and they're taking the same stance with all the other state agencies and everything like that. Yeah, Lily, I think it's I think you're having some tech issues. Okay, so I'll go ahead and continue on. And again, I know these things are getting a little complicated. If you run into any like super weird situations, or you feel like that doesn't apply, like this is even outside of that kind of scope or whatever it may be, feel free to reach out to us, and we can help you out with it. All right, so next thing we're going to talk about is our updated forms page. So um, if you've attended our last few information meetings, one of our big projects has been updating the website. And with COVID, we've definitely had some nice time to work on these kind of things. And so one thing that we put some focus on is updating our forms page, which definitely needed a little bit of a rework. It's something we had before, but definitely a bit outdated. So give me a moment here. I'm going to be switching my screen share. So take me just a second. Okay, so now you should see the website instead of the PowerPoint. Let me pull up the chat in case anyone has any questions. And so where the forms page is now, and we included this on the slide, there's a little screenshot, so if you don't remember, but it's under resources and then forms right here. And let me go ahead and zoom in on the page just a little bit so you can see a little better. There we go. So under resources and then forms. And so if you've been to our forms page before, you'll notice that there's definitely been some updates, and we've added a few things. Just want to point out a couple. So we have a few forms that we added that help just guide through the approval process. So just know that I don't believe any of them are. So none of these forms are actually required. So I just want to make that clear before I kind of talk about them. So don't think that, oh, there's a new approval form for airfare, I have to use that approval form. That's not the case. This is just strictly here as a resource to help guide you through the process. And that's the case for everything on here. So you don't have to use, none of these are required forms, just there as a resource for you. And so we added one regarding approval for airfare upgrades. So again, you can get that approval in the form of an email or letter. You may already have your blankets set up for that. So if you do that, you're welcome to keep doing that. But a few kind of instances where approvals may be required, such as airfare and immunizations, we just created a form that just kind of helps guide you through the process, and just has our logo on there, and a nice place for them to sign, and all that kind of stuff. So just know that that's there and available. Also one for the lodging exceptions, and the meals paid for others. We actually presented that new form in one of our recent information meetings. But meals paid for others, when someone's purchasing a meal for somebody else, the compliance gets a little tricky with that, where you need itemized receipts and things got to be within per diem. So that form helps guide you through the process. We did make a mileage log template, and so that's just a very basic form where it's just where you can put the starting address, end address, and the amount of miles people were driving, and that kind of stuff. Again, not required, but it's just there as a template for when you're doing a mileage reimbursement. Another couple that we added, so I will go ahead and open this one. So a special shout out to UW Bothell, actually, are the ones who created this form. And so we had kind of helped review when they were creating it, and we thought it turned out really nicely. So I actually requested if we could actually use those forms and make them something that was a resource for the rest of UW. And so just had to do a quick little edit, remove some of the stuff, places where it said Bothell and all that kind of stuff. If you do notice anything that doesn't make sense for the whole UW that I missed, feel free to reach out to me and let me know, and I can go and do the PDF editor and make a tweak. But just know, so what this is for is a lot of departments already use very similar forms. It's meant to be like a pre-reimbursement checklist. So something like you can send to the traveler, and they can punch in like all the different information. So like whether they paid for airfare or it was on CTA, or if they had ground transportation. It's just a way to like log that expense. It kind of helps with the communication between whoever is preparing the expense report and then who the traveler is. So it just helps guide, those folks through that process. And then we have one that's kind of geared for employee and one that's geared for non-UW. So know that that's there. And then we also have a couple sample letters for pre-trip approval. April is going to be discussing a change for pre-trip approval. It's actually going to be a policy change, so she'll touch on that when we get to that section. But just know that we have a couple sample forms, and once that policy change goes into effect, it's not going into effect today, and April will discuss when that's going to affect. We'll make sure to get those updated on the website. So when you come back, once that policy change goes into place, we'll have these sample forms updated with the new policy, because right now it addresses it in a way that's going to be changing. And then business class rail approval, very similar to the airfare one, just helps you guide through the approval process. So yeah, that's the new forms page. Hopefully that helps you guys out. And now I'm going to switch back to PowerPoint. Put it in presentation mode real quick. There we go. Okay. And then we provide you the links if you want to get there directly. So I got a question. I got a couple questions. Let me go up. Rosemarie is asking about XR and ER. We are going to address, April has that as a slide, so I'm going to let her go ahead and answer that one when she gets to that section. Then we also got a question, do we have to use these forms? So no, not a single form on the form page is a required form. They're just there as a resource, just to help you guide you through the process. Just got the clean, travel services logo and all that kind of stuff on there. So no, none of those are actually required. They're just there as a resource to help guide you through compliance and all that. Yep, and then Teresa just gave the link, so if you want to go check it out, that's where it's at. All right, auto liability page rework. So this is a page that's existed on our ground transportation page. So this is not something that's a policy change. But when we first announced that our website was updated, this was not something that we had updated yet. But now we actually took the time to organize this and redo it. And so what this page is, so I'll give a little background on what the page is. Before, the page was kind of built like a chart, and what it goes over is just what the different liability coverage is, just when you're traveling for university business and you're driving some sort of automobile. So whether you're, renting on national contract, if you're going off contract. So we have, if you didn't know, we have a car rental contract with Enterprise and National, but we do allow you to go off contract because some locations you're going to, there's no Enterprise and things like that, and then people are also driving their personally owned vehicle. And so what the page goes over is, when is UW, like what is UW's coverage, like what is the liability coverage, what you should be thinking about. If you run into a claim, like where should you go, who do you talk to? So it has all that type of information. So this is really good information, especially, for new travelers who haven't seen this or don't know about it. If they're driving, doing mileage for the first time and they're concerned about, what's going to happen if they happen to get in a wreck or something like that. It goes over all of that type of information. So if you haven't seen this page before, I highly recommend checking it out. And so we gave the link. There's also, if you go to our ground transportation page, it's right there. There's a new section. There's a section now that says auto liability. You click the link, it's gonna bring you there. And so kind of how we approached it is a lot of the content is actually related to UW Risk Services. But since, we manage the reimbursement and the compliance side, but UW Risk Services, and they're the ones who manage the liability side. So there's kind of a fusion of like two offices going on at the same time with this content. So we actually collaborated with UW Risk Services. So we drafted the pages, sent them over to them for review. And so they kind of helped us clean up the language or if anything that could have been reworded a little bit better to be a little bit more clear. We made some updates there. So hopefully it'll be a little bit better of a resource for you for this type of thing. One thing that, risk services they emphasized was we wanted to make sure to put more emphasis provided regarding no coverage for personally owned vehicles. So make sure you check out that section for personally owned vehicle. There is, technically there is no actual, like the way UW covers you when you're driving your personal vehicle is different, is much different than if you were driving, going off a car rental agency and things like that. They don't have the same liability coverage for you. It's usually, resulting to the coverage of that person's insurance. So if people aren't aware of that, it's definitely important content. Make sure you check it out. And then if you have any questions related to the actual university liability program. So if you have any questions about compliance, about car rental, anything like that, we're here to answer that. But if you have any questions specifically about the university liability program, when it comes to covering vehicles and stuff like that, we actually don't know the answer to that stuff. UW Risk Services, they're the experts. So make sure if you have any questions about that, go ahead and reach out to them, and they can give you all the details about that actual program if you have any more specific questions and want to know more. Alrighty, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to April. Now she'll get to that other question about ER and XR. And it looks like, I'll go ahead and unmute. There we go. And I'll turn it over to you, April, and you should be able to share now. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, just give me 1 second while I share my screen.
And I also got a question. So while you're getting that set up, Sally's asking, I don't see anything about UCAR on the page. That is a good question. If you have any, liability concerns with UCAR, I believe the reason we don't mention on our page is we're not really managing anything related to UCAR, so that's why it's not on our page. If you're concerned about UCAR, I would reach out to Transportation Services. They're the office that manages that program. So if I'd imagine that there's similarities regarding what's covered and all that kind of stuff. But if you're concerned about the actual liability side, you could reach out to Risk Services, but you could also reach out to Transportation Services directly, and then check out their website, reach out to them and say, hey, I'm interested to know more about liability coverage for UCAR, and they would, I'd imagine they're the ones who manage that content because they're the ones who manage that whole program from start to end kind of thing. So I would reach out to them. That's a good question though. Alrighty, I'll turn it over to April now.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about registration expense and whether to do that on an ER or XR. This is a question that's been asked a lot lately, and that's because of COVID. We understand that a lot of conferences are now are no longer in person and that they're being done virtually. So there may not be any travel-related expenses associated with the conference registration. So we just wanted to share with everyone that conference registration can actually be reimbursed in either module. It really comes down to personal preference. Registration can be assigned the appropriate object code in both modules. In an ER, it's actually automatically assigned based off of the line item selected. In an XR, you have to manually enter it, but in either instance, the appropriate object code can be assigned. And for those that are not familiar with XRs that mainly handle ERs, I'll kind of explain that just a little bit. ERs are for travel-related expenses that are done in the travel module of AREBA. XRs are for reimbursements to individuals for goods purchased and is done in the reimbursement module of AREBA. We do recommend, though, when processing registration, if there are travel related expenses, to go ahead and do it in an ER to reduce having to create reimbursements in two separate modules. Okay, I see no questions, but I will go back to the other question that was asked regarding in the forms section. For meals paid for others, should it be processed in an XR or an ER? It depends. So if all of the people that are getting their meal paid for, if they are all on travel status, then it should be processed as an ER. If there are individuals that were a part of that meal that weren't on travel status, it would be considered hosting and entertaining and should be done in an XR. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a policy change regarding pre-trip approval. So the current policy in the pre-trip approval section states that when lodging expense is over the allowable per diem, it is to be included in the approval. See exceptions to per diem. And the new policy change beginning October 1st is that claiming an exception to exceed lodging per diem is not required when obtaining pre-trip approval. So this policy change was done in collaboration with OFM, or the Office of Financial Management. They will actually be updating this information on their website October 1st. So that is when it will become effective for us as well. Please be advised that the travelers will still have to claim an exception if they exceed the maximum allowed for lodging per diem, but now it can be done at the time of reimbursement. Departments do have the option, though, to keep the current policy as is, as it would be deemed more strict than what we are going to be changing our policy to. And then let me look at the chat for questions. So do we still require to add a note when registration is processed on an ER? No, a note is not required. You would still need to attach the proper documentation, but no additional comments are needed. And then the next question, if the meeting is virtual, does it matter what city you enter? For example, if the conference would have been held in Portland but is now remote, is it preferable to use Portland as the city?
I jumped in on that one, just so you know.
Okay.
I said, just go ahead and put the city, since a lot of times, yeah, it's like virtual and they're already kind of like doing things in that city. I think it makes the most sense to go ahead and put city, so that one's good to go.
Thanks, Kelly. And are there any other questions regarding the policy change? No? Okay. So this is regarding our much awaited vendor discount page. This is something that we have mentioned in many travel information meetings, that this is something that we wanted to provide to campus. Pretty much it's a page on our website for you to go to see a list of travel related vendors that have negotiated rates with the university. I would like to preface that this is a living page and information will be updated as necessary. So, you know, be aware that information can change, and especially since this is a new page for us, you know, we We always value your feedback. So as you start utilizing the page, if there are things that you think could be improved upon, we always appreciate that feedback, and we will assess and update as necessary. So now I'm going to show you the actual page and where it lies. Can all of you see the travel services homepage? Okay, great. So you'll go to the travel services homepage and you have two options. You can always select from the drop down and select book and pay, or you can use our quick and easy book and pay icon. And then as you can see, this is a new anchor. It says UW Travel Discounts. And you will click on this and it'll take you to the landing page. I just would like for everyone to know that this is only accessible for people with a net ID, so this cannot be shared with outside individuals. So pretty much, like I said, this page is to showcase all of the travel related vendor discounts. It's categorized by airfare, lodging, and ground transportation / other. And it kind of gives a little explanation as to each of these categories. And then if you scroll down, there's a how to use, information about our Alaska partnership, and also we wanted to highlight the whole U. And that's a place where you can use these discounts for personal use. So please make sure to check that out. So I'm going to just briefly touch upon each category so you can kind of see how it looks. So in airfare, we only have a few airlines that we are contracted with. And just so you know, Alaska Airlines, the information link will actually take you, I'm sorry, give me one sec. If you go to the how to book, it explains that you have to use a travel agency in order to utilize these contracts. Also be aware that with Alaska Airlines, we do have the state contract, and that information is also on the website. We are working with Alaska to get a page added so that you can actually see a breakdown of our corporate contract discounts and all the savings and the perks that you can achieve by utilizing that corporate contract in addition to our state contract. And then I'm actually going to jump to ground transportation other. So ground transportation other provides you a list of the vendors, and it explains the vendor type. So it's not just for ground transportation, but a visa provider for the ferry and airport parking. So all of that information on how to utilize those discounts is provided right here. And I see a question from Eileen. I'm confused because I thought staff can obtain air contract rates without going through an agent by EasyBiz. That is correct. That is in regards to the state contract. But if you'd like to utilize the corporate contract, which actually has more routes, you do have to go through a travel agency. Can we use personal discount for Alaska as UW employees? No, you cannot, unfortunately. Okay, looks like no more questions. So now I'm going to take us to the lodging page. So here you will see a list of all of the lodging vendors. And as you can see, there are some that don't have a point of contact, but there is instructions on how to obtain the UW discounted rate. And some of these do have direct booking links. Some of them have PDF documents that have detailed instructions as well. And some have neither, and it just requires a phone call. So let me scroll up here. And then this is a really great feature that we've added, which is a Google Maps, and you can actually see that all of the locations where we have vendor discounts. So what I'm going to do, you can actually open up and view the map, and say if I was looking for I have a conference in San Diego. I'll go ahead and see that we actually do have a contracted hotel in San Diego. And if you click on it, it's actually going to provide you with a little bit of information. It's going to have the contract and supplier number, the hotel's address, their phone number and email if you wanted to reach out directly to the hotel, and the appropriate sales contact if you had more questions regarding that discount. I see a couple questions. So as I said, this is a living page, and I don't know for those of you who have dealt with hotels, but there is a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily call it turnover, but you know, point of contacts for hotels are constantly changing, so we will try to keep that information as up to date as possible. But that is why we provide, you know, the hotel's contact info, as well as direct booking links. So then that way you don't have to necessarily speak to a sales contact. So for anything in which you see a contact that isn't up to date, we will be working on making sure that that is up to date as much as possible.
I'll jump in on that one too for a second. And if you have an updated contact for us, if you could email us at travel@uw.edu, since we'll be the ones managing the page. So yeah, you're welcome to, like, a lot of them will have, you know, general contact, which you can reach out to them. But if you do actually have a contact at that hotel that, you know, that you've actually been communicating with, and you know that, you know, the person that we have on there is no longer with them, they're furloughed or whatever the instance may be, if you could actually just reach out to us at our contact email, just tell us who that contact is and who the vendor is, then we can work on getting that updated, and that's super helpful for everyone else who's using it.
Thanks, Kelly. And then there's another question. For faculty and staff who go directly to book their own travel and get reimbursed, will there be a UW-wide announcement sent to all faculty and staff regarding the new discounts page for preferred vendors? So no, this will not be a campus-wide announcement. You are more than happy to share this information with your travelers. This is something that would be available to anyone on campus as long as they have a UW Net ID. This is going to be living on our website. And let's see.
And yeah, I'll add something to that too. If there is like some sort of like message that goes out to campus or to faculty, or let's say like something that UW marketing puts out or something like that, where you think like it would be a good spot for them to actually see that information. We're definitely open to, working with one of those units to get the information out there. If it's like one of those newsletters that, marketing sends out, something like that. We do have contacts in those offices, so we can, if there's something that you recommend, again, you can give us a call or email us at Travel and say, oh, we think it'd be really good if you announce this in this newsletter kind of thing. That's something that we can do as well. So just want to go ahead and add that.
Thanks, Kelly. And then another question was, these vendor discounts are for folks who organize lodging for travelers here, correct? Yes, but like I said, it's open for anyone with a UW Net ID to view these vendor discounts. But please be aware that we do preface on our main discount page that if some of these vendors do allow for you to utilize for personal use, and those that do not. It is up to the traveler to confirm with the vendor if it can be used for personal use or not. Another question is, I don't see other Stay Pineapple locations on the map like Boston. Am I missing it? No, these are the locations that are provided by the hotel. So that is something that you would have to reach out to them about. This is just the information that these hotel vendors have provided us. From my understanding that we do have the majority of the Stay Pineapple locations on the map, and they are listed on the discount page. And let's see here.
Yeah, just to clarify, State Pineapple has gone through some like rebranding as well. Like the State Pineapple is like the group, but you'll notice that they have a lot of different hotel names as well. So it's a little bit confusing. Like a lot of their locations were Pineapple, and now they're like kind of rebranding each one to have its own kind of like unique name. So just know that we have quite a few on there. But if there's one, if you believe, we do have one with Boston, again, you can reach out to us or maybe clarify with the vendor. And again, like April said, it's a living document. So if you feel like one is missing, we can work with them, get it added, all that kind of good stuff.
And so I can actually show an example. So Hotel Rose Portland, that is a Stay Pineapple hotel. If you click on the booking link, it actually takes you to their University Inn landing page, but it states that you can click Book Now in the upper right corner to select a different hotel. So if you click on here, you can actually change to the different hotel locations that they have. And as you could see, Boston is listed on here. Okay, next question. Most of our travelers go straight to book their travel without consulting with us first, so it is helpful for them to be aware of this vendor list. Absolutely. Just like we are always promoting all of our vendor discounts, and we've always promoted the use of a travel agency, we can only do so much. We would love, to work in partnership with each department. If you have any ideas of how we can communicate this, we'd be happy to team up and get that information out there. Next question, what type of ID UW staff card is required at the time of check-in? Does it vary by hotel? Excellent question. Yes, it does vary by hotel, and some do require to show a UW ID card. Can travelers still use Airbnb? Absolutely. So one of the things about the Google Maps is that, as you can see, for example, on my page here, it says Airbnb and location address Obviously, they don't have one location. They have multiple locations. So we cannot provide those addresses on this Google Maps. It's more for hotels that have individual location addresses. So yes, you can still use Airbnb. And this booking link takes you directly to the Airbnb for work. Next question. Are the contracted hotels and rates accessible working with our appointed travel agencies? Yes, this information has been, our vendor list has been shared with the travel agencies, and they should have those rates loaded into their system. Are we still allowing travelers to book through CBT so long as they pay with their own credit card? Yes. So one thing I would like to add is this is not to supersede in any way how campus books travel. Our main thing was we kind of felt that there was no central way for campus to know what discounts we have with our travel vendors, and we wanted to be able to provide campus with a tool to utilize these discounts, because a lot of the discounts we have with a lot of the hotel vendors, the discounts are really great. Oftentimes it's a percentage off of their lowest or best available rate, which is better than most travelers can get through Expedia or Travelocity or any of those other third-party sites. So I just want to reiterate that. And then to Teresa's point, a great way to ensure you get the discounts is to use our contracted travel agencies. All of these discounts are loaded into their system. So just so you know, there are things that we will be updating for ease of use, such as when you click on these booking links, it'll pop out to a separate window. There are some other things that I would like to add to the site to make it more user-friendly. So like I said, this is a living page and will be updated accordingly. Are there any other questions? Can these discounts be used for interviewees or non-UW guests on UW business, especially if they don't have UW ID? So that's a really great question. I would actually recommend reaching out to the hotel and just let them know what the situation is. I'm sure it's dependent on the hotel.
Yeah, just to reiterate, like these are individually sort of worked out, contracts. We don't have like a there's no like universal policy or contract for each of these. So like some of them may actually allow you to use it for personal use, even some of these hotel ones. If you're just a UW employee, it just depends on how the agreement is set up. So it's just really important, when you reach out to them that you clearly spell out, what exactly you're taking care of. You're saying I got non-UW guests coming in. Can I use the agreement for this kind of thing? So if you're ever unsure, just let them know like exactly what you're doing, and then they can tell you whether it fits the agreement and all that kind of good stuff. So it's just it's very dependent on how that agreement's set up, all those kind of things. So just make sure you're considering that.
And I'll just give another second or two for any other questions to trickle in regarding the vendor discount page. And I just want you all to know that we are so excited to have this page go live, and we hope you find it useful, and we look forward to hearing your feedback so we can improve it and make it a great tool for campus to use. We book guests using our CTA. Are these discounts available for these too? Yes. So like I said, I always recommend reaching out to the sales contact vendor if you have any questions or concerns, but you should be able to utilize it. And then I know definitely working with a contracted travel agency, they might already have that CTA information if your department has an account set up with them as well. Okay.
All right. So yeah, we're getting towards the end of the meeting. If anybody has any questions, related to the content that we presented, or feel free to, if you have any other compliance. Oh, sorry, you have another slide. That's my bad.
That's all
I
right.
thought that was the last one for some reason. My bad. Okay,
That's
go
all
ahead.
right. I should have ended it with a big bang with the vendor discount page. But kind of in coordination with travel related, we want to just highlight airline industry trends. So as I'm sure many of you have heard maybe online, seen on the news, multiple airlines, including Alaska, Delta, American, and United Airlines, have announced the elimination of change fees. I would like to highlight there are certain restrictions, and that depends on each and every airline, whether it's domestic, more local, international, or if it's international, and then the type of airfare ticket, whether it's basic economy, economy, first class, etc. So we highly recommend reaching out to the airline, or if you're working with a travel agency, reach out to them when your department is ready to utilize your airfare credit, because I know a lot of you are holding on to a lot of airfare credit with all of the airfare cancellations that occurred because of COVID. This is actually really great to see that the airline industry is doing this. So please make sure to reach out to the appropriate people to confirm if that elimination of change fees is applicable to the airfare credit type that you have. And then we got some questions here. Can we use Uber Eats to host our guests attending virtual conferences? Are you asking if, if the conference is being hosted in Seattle, but they are in Chicago, can you send Uber Eats food to them? Is that what an example of the question is?
Yeah, I would just kind of chime into. I feel like we need quite a bit of context to that. Yeah, kind of the reason, what exactly is going on. Is that in Seattle? Is it out of town? So they're out of town. You're trying to pay for their meals. Again, you have to think about travel status. Are they on travel status? All that kind of good stuff.
So to Kelly's point, and if I was correct in my example, if UW was hosting the conference and your attendees are attending virtually, you would have to ask the question, are they on travel status and would they be eligible for per diem, in which a meal could, and then that goes into were meals provided. So like Kelly said, that's very situational. So if you could reach out to us with more context, we'd be happy to answer that question.
Yeah, and I'll kind of chime in a little, thinking about it for a second. So I'm viewing it as like hosting and entertaining. So you would kind of treat it as if, someone was going to that conference and paying for meals for somebody else. I'm not going to give that as a definitive answer. If you could reach out, I think we should evaluate it a little bit more. But it's kind of sound like it would be a hosting and entertaining, so it wouldn't be meals paid for others. If they're not on travel status, then you'd have to, revert to like the food approval page. It sounds like it probably have to go on a 64 discretionary budget. And you'd be treating it as hosting and entertaining and reimbursing it through an e-reimbursement. But I think we might want to think about that one a little bit more just to make sure we're good on that.
Another question came in at the end. Do you have an update on when people will need to have the enhanced driver's license? I see that Anthony in the chat provided a link. So yes, that has officially been extended to October of 2021, so October of next year. We do highly encourage, though, that travelers do not wait until September of 2021 to get their enhanced driver's license. We do strongly encourage to do this now. So please encourage your travelers to do so. But yes, it has been extended officially until October of next year. And Kelly, now I am done with my slides.
Okay, now's my cue this time. Thank you. That's too funny. Yeah, and I also I'm going to share a link right now. So this is the link that we have presented on in the information meetings. We like the way this one's spelled out, and it goes over, the Real ID Act in Washington. And like April said, it got extended, and it got extended because of the coronavirus, just because obviously things are crazy right now. And I know, I think getting a passport right now is super backlogged because international travel is super crazy and all that kind of stuff. So, but if you want to keep up to date, that is the link that we've been presenting on in the information meetings. So, yeah, obviously taking care of that sooner than later is going to be the best thing to do. But yeah, now's my cue for the end of the meeting. So if you have any other questions, so feel free to ask any questions. If you have any, compliance questions or anything like that, it doesn't have to be related to the slides that we're presenting. We can take some time to answer that kind of stuff. Since it's only 11:35 and we go through it to 12, so we have plenty of time for that. But if you're just here for the content, this is the end of the meeting. So we appreciate you stopping by. And as a reminder, we'll be getting out the listserv in the next couple of business days. Usually takes about 2 days. We just got to clip the recording and get it on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So you can expect it in the next couple of days. And then we'll also include the PDF copy of the slides. So no need to reach out separately or anything like that. We will be sending that out for sure. And again, we're open to feedback, anything about these meetings that we could change, do better, all that kind of stuff. Feel free to reach out and let us know. But it was good to have you guys all here, and hope you're all staying healthy, safe with all the craziness of 2020. So I did go to questions.